Hi, my name is Cedar Stevens. I'm with Natural Magic Shop, and this is going to be my new YouTube channel. Welcome, this is going to be fun. I'm going to call this series Gardening in the Time of Coronavirus because I've been doing a lot of gardening, and I bet a lot of people are thinking about gardening now that a lot of us have sequester in place orders going on, and gardening seems to be a mentally healthy thing to do. So I look kind of at our mass behavior at gardening as kind of one of our reactions to crisis, and I formulated the stages of the apocalypse. So they're kind of like the stages of grief, but like, you know, for the apocalypse. It goes something like this: denial, abject terror, anger, drinking too much rum, and then planting things in the wrong season. So that's what we're going to do here with the Natural Magic Gardening channel, is teach you how to plant things in the right season and how to go about it in the right way so that new gardeners will have the best opportunity for success. And we're going to start from the ground up, teaching you how to do breaking ground to build a new garden. So one of the first parts of breaking a new garden in is what I call breaking ground, and it's just the removal of whatever is growing on the top of the soil where you're going to start a new garden. Alright, so I'm starting a new bed here, but here I can show you where this is going to go. Over here, this is an herb and ornamental flower garden that I started in March of last year using this very same process. So this part of my yard, and by the way, we're gardening in Central Texas. So if you're not in Central Texas, this probably doesn't apply so much to you, and you might want to go find your garden porn elsewhere. My two main tools for this are this tool, which is called a sharpshooter, or it's used for planting trees primarily, but it can go deep into the ground when you stomp on it. Bam! Alright? Bam! So I dig in, pull back, and I'm looking for the front edge of this line of fire to lift up like that. And then I'm going to push forward. And then I'm just going to keep going on down the line like this. Lift and push back. Not too much, just enough to get that square of soil to separate from the base, and push back. Alright, and I'm going to continue all the way down. This garden's on a little bit of a slope. I found out that jumping on this thing is easier if I start from the high ground and work my way down to the low ground. So here's the low end. So when I'm starting on the low end, I have to jump up higher. It's a lot more work. So I'm going to try and course correct on that. The other main tool for doing this work, and I often use both of them even on the same job site, is this thing. A lot of people think it's a pitchfork, but it's called a spading fork because these tines are thick and made of iron, steel. Even so, you can see how the hard clay soil here, I've bent this tool from lots of love and use. So I do pretty much the same process with this one, except for, get it, I don't have to jump on top of this one as much. But you can see it produces much the same results, except for you don't get that really clear-cut line of fire on the backside. So, like I said, this is St. Augustine, and we're in part shade here in this yard for much of the day. which is not ideal for vegetable gardens or sunny plants. But there's lots of things that I can plant here anyway. I placed the garden here to take advantage of the most sun. You can see we're getting some sun here. But also you can see how these trails have naturally developed where the family walks from the driveway to the front door. So I'm going to use those natural trails and let them be trails, because you don't want to work against that. So here we're digging up St. Augustine. Alright, so after I've made this line of fire go all the way around, now I can start pulling out the grass. So now I'm going to pull up these chunks of soil with the grass on top of them, and I'm going to be careful not to put this chunk to work on the places where I need to go, because then I'd get them covered with dirt and I couldn't see the work that I need to do. But I'm going to put that chunk on the place that's already been worked on so I can see better what I'm doing. And I'm going to shake out and pull off the dirt clods and get that St. Augustine off of the surface of the soil. This is also a really good time to be finding the bugs in the soil that you don't want. So that's a June bug larva, and it does eat baby plants. Chuck it onto the driveway. Ah, here's another one. Look at that grub. Ew. I don't even know if the birds eat those. So this is, if you've got St. Augustine soil, this is going to be really easy to deal with. Now, the next lesson will be how to contend with Bermuda grass. Bermuda grass is super hard to dig, but I do it all the time, because if Bermuda grass is growing, then you know you've got full sun, and you've got plenty of sun to grow all of your vegetable crops and most of your herbs that need full sun. Alright, so here we have on this side of the driveway, we've got a full sun garden, and Bermuda grass is the main cover on this terrain. The neighbors have done a nice job of delineating the property line, so I'm thinking I'm just going to make this a flower bed. This stuff that's growing on top here is not Bermuda grass. This is called burr clover, and it's a cute little clover, and it's got these burrs on it. They don't hurt. Can you see that? They're kind of twisted up into a spiral. So they're a native weed, and they're covering up the job site here now. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to pull these up to expose the Bermuda grass that's underneath, and then we can show you how to get down to business. Welcome back to Gardening in the Time of Coronavirus. I'm Cedar Stevens, and I'm going to teach you how to contend with a surface of soil that is covered with Bermuda grass, which is one of our big enemies in central Texas gardening. I've cleared back the burr clover so you can see the Bermuda grass that's growing under it. It is an invasive, exotic, perennial grass, and look, it's just super tough, right? It's good in one way that we know that once we get rid of this Bermuda grass, we're going to have a full sun garden that we can plant flowers, vegetables, and herbs in that need full sun. So it wouldn't work if I just yanked all of this top off and tried to plant over it, because much of the Bermuda grass is underground. So I'm going to definitely need the sharpshooter to get at those roots that are deep underground. I've chosen a corner to start digging from because once I get this clean, I know I don't have to defend from Bermuda grass encroaching on the curb here or the driveway here. So I can depend on the concrete to keep me from having to dig up Bermuda grass every single time. So I'm going to stomp here right at the edge. So you see that it's starting to come up a little bit? Super hard. This first square is going to be the toughest part of the whole job. Getting down a little deeper. See if I can pop the wedge up. There we go. All right. Now, check out the Bermuda grass. See these white underground runners? And this is a whole Bermuda grass. If I were to use a tiller on this stuff and broke it up, each node would be able to sprout a root and sprout seeds and start a whole new Bermuda grass plant on its own. So I'm going to try my very best to get all of these underground stolons out. So it's rained here a little bit, but the soil is pretty dry. So it's a little drier than ideal. You see it's crumbling a little bit. That's going to make it a little more difficult to get it all out cleanly. But it's better than the soil being really wet and soggy, because each clump will be very muddy, and that'll make your hands get soft. That'll give you hangnails from dealing with this tough stuff. So this is better. Now here's a crack in the sidewalk, and that Bermuda grass is hiding out in that crack. These are, by the way, are blue cheese ants. They're good ants. They're not fire ants. If you smush them, it smells like blue cheese. So we like these guys. They fight fire ants. All right, so once I've gotten this chunk out, I'm gonna take it over and I'm gonna get the first chunks clean in the tub, but it's gonna take a little more effort because those underground stolons, look how they go deep down. Sometimes they can go up to a foot or 2 feet down. The deeper they are, the more resilient they are, and they'll come up year after year after year. So I'm going to spend a good amount of time with each chunk getting the Bermuda grass stolons out. Hey, so it's been about 20 minutes and look how much I've done. So it's slow moving work, but it's a good idea to do this thoroughly. And how thoroughly I do this depends on what I'm going to plant here. So if I wanted to plant annual flowers or annual vegetable crops like green beans and squashes, I wouldn't have to be as thorough as I'm showing you how to do now. If I'm going to plant perennial plants of any kind, like perennial herbs, rosemary, sage, thyme, rose bushes, ornamental perennials for flowers and stuff, I'd want to be very, very thorough, because if any of these little sprigs of Bermuda grass are left in the soil and then you plant a perennial plant on top of it, it's going to grow into the roots of your rosemary plant and then be very hard to weed out after that. And when you weed it, you're probably going to injure your rosemary plant and it's going to croak. So if I'm doing this for perennial plantings, native restoration, we do it very thoroughly, and I'm seeking to get about 98% of the Bermuda grass out. 15 minutes, and it's going a little faster, but I'm taking my time and going thoroughly. Like I was saying earlier, I will do this really thoroughly if I'm going to put perennial plants of any kind. If I'm putting annual vegetables, I might miss some Bermuda grass and it'll grow up again, and I'll have to dig that out again as soon as one crop is done and you're fixing to plant another crop. If you look over there, these are perennial herbs that I was planting right next to the curb. So I did a really good job of digging out all of the Bermuda grass, and I haven't had to weed Bermuda grass out of here since it was dug last year. Look, there's one tiny spot of Bermuda grass. Growing in that crack that I couldn't get it out. So that is fighting a bioenergetic warfare against those sprigs that are growing under the concrete. Hey, welcome back to Gardening in the Time of Coronavirus. My name is Cedar Stevens, and I'm going to finish up our little segment on breaking ground for a new garden. As you can see from yesterday, I got a little bit further, and I was going to keep going at it, but it was rainy and wet, and now it's cold too. So I just wanted to point out a couple of other tips for how to do this effectively, and also how to not hurt yourself. All right, my husband T, and T, why don't you turn the camera around?
No. Oh, let's not say we did.
All right, he's filming me, so he suggested I tell you how much distance between the line of fire and where I dig should be, and that depends on how thick the soil is, but generally it's going to be about 6 inches. So if I go down and I'm able to pop up that front line, then that's deep enough. But if I try to go deeper and make it about 1 foot and go down, I'm not going to be able to get that front line up. So that's how much terrain, how deep your digs should be. Okay, a little bit about self-care during this. This is really hard work, all right? I'm thoroughly conditioned to doing this work, and I can still hurt my back, hurt my shoulders, hurt my neck. So I just want to talk about self-care a little bit. Because I'm conditioned for this, I can do this kind of work for about 4 hours at a stretch and not get too exhausted. People who haven't done this kind of exercise, even if they're well conditioned in other ways, should only do it for about 2 hours in a stretch. But you see, in 4 hours, I was able to do enough breaking ground. I could grow a tomato, I could grow a couple of basils, I could grow some flowers here in this plot, so that's plenty of time. I wear, when it's warm, I wear a handkerchief over my eyes because I don't want sweat dripping into my eyes, because obviously we want to avoid wiping our eyes when we're gardening in the time of coronavirus. And I wear a hat just to keep my hair tidy, because if my hair gets in my eyes or in my mouth, then that's another temptation to touch my face. So, and other considerations are I'm going to be wearing boots that are tough enough to be jumping on shovels. I don't want to ruin my sandals or bruise the arches of my feet. Mm-hmm. And another great tip is to wear long socks and to pull them down over the tops of your boots. That will avoid getting clods of dirt into your shoes, and you don't have to take your shoes out and shake out the dirt all the time. Okay, so the one last thing I wanted to point out for gardening in the time of coronavirus for this segment on breaking ground is that we are trying to avoid one of the main pitfalls in the stages of the apocalypse, and that is planting seeds in the wrong season. So you saw this on Walking Dead. they made this mistake in this stadium and it brought failure. So to avoid doing this, here is what I recommend for gardeners in Central Texas. The books on gardening in Texas generally don't work for us in Central Texas. We're special, all right? This is a production of a local community group, the Travis County Extension Service and the City of Austin, and I sell them. And the important information that we're going to find in here, so as to avoid planting seeds in the wrong season, is a couple of cool graphs. Let's see if I can get there. All right. So this shows you flowers and what season to plant them, what months to plant them. So we'll see that here we are in April, and we can look down and see the things that we should be planting in good season. And this has been updated to adjust for global warming. And here's the vegetable season. So if I'm looking for what to plant in April, I'll turn to the month of April. And there you have it. All right, so check it out. I've made a lot of progress here. And I'm showing you how to break ground when you have Bermuda grass growing in a place that you want to grow flowers or vegetables or herbs. So thanks for joining, and we'll pick up again with gardening in the time of coronavirus when I start to plant tomatoes and basils and flowers in here, and I'll show you some planting techniques too. But for now, I'm Cedar Stevens with Natural Magic Shop, signing off. Happy gardening.